located on the second floor in the big room that says Special Collections on it. We are a two-sided department. We are the genealogy department as well as the Baton Rouge Room Archives. Got a bunch of great information on the table back there about all the fun stuff that we do. Our genealogy department is excellent. If you're ever interested in doing any kind of research, we teach classes. We have wonderful resources in both print and online. We also do one-on-one consultations. So if you're stuck in a particular spot in your genealogy and you need help moving forwards with it, you can call and make an appointment. One of our genealogists will sit with you and help you get through it. The Baton Rouge Room Archives, our fearless assistant director, Mary Stein, refers to us as Baton Rouge's attic. We are an archives collection that reflects the life and culture of Baton Rouge. We put on displays, rotating displays. Right now we've got a fun back-to-school display that's got the histories of many different schools in Baton Rouge and really fun memorabilia from our collection. We've also got a wonderful online presence for both sides of our department on our info guides, which are on the library's homepage. Part of the Baton Rouge Room's mission includes these monthly lectures. We do these lectures in this meeting room on the third Wednesday of every month. We do a wide variety of topics. Next month at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, October 18th, we are going to have Jeremy White come and talk about the little girl at the bottom of the picture, which is about his wife Edie's search for her biological family. It's an amazing saga of a journey that involves a DNA search, cross-country adventures, and discovering answers to long-held secrets and prayers. So it seems like it's going to be very exciting, and we've met Jeremy, and he's very personable, and I think it will be a really fun talk. But surely it won't be any more fun than the talk that we're going to have tonight. We have the wonderful Christopher Kennedy here tonight. Christopher just graduated from LSU with his MLIS. He's one of us now, library science. He earned a BA in history, minoring in English at Louisiana Tech University, and he has a Master's of Arts degree in teaching from LA Tech as well. He enjoys his current employment as an administrative coordinator at the Louisiana State Archives, who we love, and he's gaining further experience volunteering at other archives and museums. He's here tonight to talk about his new book, Louisiana Tech's Joe Aillet. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, Melissa. Judging by the name Joe Aillet, you might assume that he grew up in Louisiana, South Louisiana, as a Cajun, born and raised. And you would be correct, but also incorrect. He was born in New York City in 1905. His parents were of an immigrant background. His mom was Irish. His dad was not exactly sure, maybe Italian or Greek background. But in the 1800s and early 1900s, we had a lot of immigrants from Europe come to America. They heard about the American dream, and they decided that they wanted a part of that, and that it would be better than where they were currently. So they came over here with high expectations, but a lot of times the reality was a lot worse. They came over here, a lot of them, English was not their first language. They're competing for jobs. The living conditions were awful. The famous immigrant tenement homes were just really bad, cramped, unsanitary, and a lot of times diseases were very prominent, as well as crime. So in these conditions, a lot of times there were children who were orphaned. They lost a family member or both parents. So there were a lot of children on the streets of New York. And in the early, mid-1800s, there was the birth of a movement called the Orphan Train movement. So the idea was to take children from these conditions and move them to an area that was better. The idea was to send them out west to farming communities and rural communities and place them with families where they had a better opportunity than they currently had. So these early groups were primarily Protestant, and they took in children from anywhere from infants to 18 years old, and they would send them to these communities where there were families willing to adopt. In 1869, the New York Family Hospital was founded, and it was a Catholic organization. They were a little different from the first Orphan Train groups. They focused primarily on infants to 6 years old for the children that they took in. To the right is the founder, Sister Mary Irene Fitzgibbon. She was a member of the Sisters of Charity of New York, and that was a Catholic religious order founded by St. Elizabeth Ann Seton on the left. So this is a picture of the mural at the Opelousas Orphan Train Museum, and it's depicting one of two Orphan Train fleets that came to Opelousas in 1907. So at 2.5 years old, Coach Aillet was on one of these trains coming to Opelousas. And the way that the New York Family Hospital operated, they would have representatives, usually priests, that would reach out to different dioceses across the United States. And if there was enough church parishes that were interested in adoption, they would send an orphan train fleet to a central train depot at a central location. So a lot of times, priests would screen potential families. Are they able to take care of these children, provide them a good, solid background, and are they going to raise them in the Catholic faith? And oddly enough, parents could basically order their child. They had characteristics from hair color, eye color, height, facial characteristics, skin tone, and a lot of this had to do with trying to place the children in families, whereas it would be like they were part of the family. Because back then, adoption was not really looked at as it is now. It's a lot more accepted today than it was back then. And a lot of times, children could be mercilessly teased by their peers if they found out that they were adopted or orphans or anything like that. So when they arrived to their destination, the families would have tags with a number corresponding to their child. So as soon as they got off the train, they knew that it was their child, as you can see in the picture. So this is the kind of environment that Coach Aillet arrived to in Opelousas. And sometimes, like Louisiana was a unique case because a lot of times the children that came here, French was not their first language, but the families that were adopting them spoke French, and sometimes it was exclusively French. Like in Aillet's case, I'm not sure if the Aillet family was exclusively French, but he was definitely coming into that environment. And safe to say, French was not his first language. So on the left is Father John Ingerbrink of Opelousas, who organized the Opelousas Orphan Trains. On the right is Father Johann Roge of Youngsville, Louisiana, with his pets. And Father Roge was responsible for Coach Aillet's education growing up. And oddly enough, Aillet's adoptive father was named Joseph Aillet. His biological father was Joseph Forca, so the name Joe kind of stuck. And then, sadly, his adoptive father died a couple years after he arrived in Louisiana, so it was primarily his adoptive mom, who was widowed, and Father Roguet, who raised him. So through Father Roguet, he had the opportunity to attend Holy Cross High School in New Orleans, and that was ran by the Congregation of Holy Cross, which was another Catholic holy order founded in France. And in the middle, you'll notice the athletic logo for Holy Cross, and it has a lot in common with Notre Dame University, both in the color scheme and in the font, and there's a very good reason for that. On the left is Blessed Basil Moreau of France, who is the founder of the order. On the right is Father Edward Sorin. He was instrumental in founding Notre Dame University, and also St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, and that's where Coach Aillet attended college. So all of Coach Aillet's coaches when he was in school were affiliated with Notre Dame University. This could be like they went to school at Notre Dame and played there, or coached in some capacity. So on the left is Coach Jack Maurer. That was his coach at St. Edward's University. On the right is the 1923 undefeated St. Edward's football team, and Coach Aillet is at the top left. And that was his freshman year at St. Edward's. His senior year at Holy Cross, he was a member of the first Holy Cross football team. In the middle of the top row is Coach Aillet. He was a member of the Surplice Choir at St. Edward's. So he was kind of a Renaissance man. He did everything. He played every sport that he could. He sang. He had a very talented musical voice and taught himself piano. So there was really nothing that he didn't want to learn. This is Coach Aillet and Ruby Como Aillet, who would become his wife. This is when they attended Southwestern University, which is University of Louisiana Lafayette today. He did not graduate from St. Edward's. I'm not sure why, I never figured that out. But he kind of came back home to Lafayette and graduated from Southwestern. So his first coaching position was actually at Southwestern. He didn't play football his senior year. Instead, he was a student coach. And from there, he went to Haynesville and coached at Haynesville High School. It's kind of like on the border of Louisiana and Arkansas. It was completely unlike anything he had experienced before this. He was raised in a very sheltered Catholic environment growing up, and there's like no Catholics in Haynesville. It's in the middle of the Bible Belt, and there's like little to no Cajuns either. So there's no French being spoken, there's no Mass on Sunday morning, but something he did find in common with the community was a shared love for education and for sports, because they wanted the best. First, they wanted the best education for their children, and secondly, they wanted to be the best football team in the state. So if any of y'all are familiar with high school football, you're likely familiar with somewhat with Haynesville, because they won a lot of state championships. And Aillet was a part of the early successes of Haynesville. And from there, he went to Northwestern. He was an assistant coach for a few years there. In 1939, he helped Northwestern have their first undefeated football season. And then finally, in 1940, he came to Louisiana Tech. So when he came to Tech, he found that there were a few more Catholics and a few more Cajuns. But there was no church. So the top left is the education building. That's where they held Mass on Sunday mornings. A priest from West Monroe would come celebrate Mass, and then that was pretty much it. But Aillet was not satisfied with this. A year after he came to Louisiana Tech, he helped organize the parishioners, and St. Thomas Aquinas was founded. That's the original church on the bottom left. Of course, today, the new church is much bigger. Well, not much, but it's a little bigger. And that current space is now occupied by a new church life center, which is pretty big. But on the right is Coach Aillet addressing those in attendance for the dedication of the student center at St. Thomas Aquinas. And the bishop is Bishop Greco of Natchitoches. So Coach Aillet had a lot of success as a football coach and as a golf coach. 12 conference championships as a golf coach. Lots of conference championships in the old Louisiana Intercollegiate Conference. And lots of conference championships in the Gulf States Conference, which he helped organize. In the top left is Coach Aillet with quarterback Billy Laird. Laird would go on to become the quarterback for the New England Patriots, and then later came back and was the head coach of Ruston High School. Won several state championships in the late 80s. And I attended Ruston High. Coach Laird was still there. I'm not sure what he was doing there, but I heard lots of great things about him, and he was pretty cool. The bottom left is it's against the University of Southwestern. I want to say early 60s, and it's a pretty good illustration of the wing T formation. So Coach Aillet was always well known for being very innovative and not satisfied with kind of like the status quo of the times, which was, as the saying goes, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. There was not a whole lot of passing going on at the time, but Coach Aillet was always propelling the Tech offense to incorporate more passing. So today, Louisiana Tech is pretty well known for producing good quarterbacks. And the one on the top right is kind of like, it looks kind of simple. It's just like him with a football, and he's like at practice with kind of like a goofy attire. But for me, it means a lot because all the former athletes that I talked to, they always made a big point about how well dressed he was, and there was like a mystique surrounding him. It was like, kind of because he was a Renaissance man and well-read, well-spoken, he kind of intimidated his players and also his coaching staff. So they always wanted to make sure that they did not misspeak in front of him. So they always said that you never saw him without a coat and tie anywhere. He always had it on. But this picture to me kind of brings him back down to earth and kind of presents a more human side of him. This is the coaching staff. So the picture on the left is kind of like more when he first got there. From left to right, we have Coach Huey Williamson, athletic trainer Glenn Tilley, Coach Aillet, Coach Jimmy Mize, Cecil Crowley, the baseball coach Barry Hinton, and George Daugherty. Then the next picture is from 1966. That was his last season as head football coach at Louisiana Tech. We have Aillet, Darty, Mize, Williamson, E.J. Lewis, and Lee Hedges. Interesting thing about Lee Hedges, he was the head football coach of Woodlawn in Shreveport, and in the 60s, they had a lot of really good athletes, many of which played at Louisiana Tech, and one of those was Terry Bradshaw. So I just put this in here because Louisiana Tech has always been a very small school, but our fans have always been very dedicated to the football team, even in the rain, like the one on the left. So this is from the first Coach Aillet Day, kind of celebrating everything that he did for Louisiana Tech. And the top left is President F.J. Taylor addressing the crowd at halftime. Also behind him is Coach Aillet and Ruby Aillet. The arrested mayor, Johnny Parrott, another former Coach Aillet football player, and dignitaries from the State Department of Education. On the right, we have some of the gifts that Aillet received: a new car, a new golf cart, and a color TV, which was a pretty big deal in 1963. And the last picture is the parade before the game. And what I like about it is it was taken in front of St. Thomas Aquinas, and the service station behind them is still there. So like as a kid, every time that I went to St. Thomas, I saw the building there and I was like, oh, okay. But seeing it back then, for some reason, it just means a little more to me now. Some things never change. This is President Ralph Ropp. He and Coach Aillet got along very well. Their relationship went back to when they both worked at Northwestern. And the pictures on the left are for the State Fair game. Louisiana Tech and Northwestern were big rivals back in the day. And the Louisiana Tech students would have a tradition of burning in effigy the demon football team of Northwestern. And then that's Ropp at the bottom with the Louisiana Tech State Fair Queen. And this is President F.J. Taylor. He and Aillet did not get along at all. Basically, the relationship that Aillet enjoyed with President Ropp evaporated when Taylor became president. And that was primarily because of their personality differences. Coach Aillet was very reserved, very just cool, calm, collected. Whereas with Taylor, everything was a big production. It was very flamboyant. And as far as the football program goes, President Taylor had big ideas. Maybe not being on par with LSU, but being pretty close. And Coach Aillet's views of progression were much more kind of like focused on education than sports. I mean, he would tutor his athletes if they needed help. He always made sure they had the good grades. As a matter of fact, even for practice, he would adjust the practice schedule to allow certain players, like if they had a lab in the afternoon, practice was delayed, which like you never hear of that with anyone. But that's how Coach Aillet was. And it's not to diminish President Taylor's dedication to education either, because, for instance, President Taylor was responsible for Wiley Tower, which hosts the university library. But Wiley Tower is a big 16-story building. So it's just another example of everything has to be a big production with President Taylor. So these are some more kind of school spirit pictures. Some of the mascots when I was head coach. some of the old state fair pennants and President Romp dancing at a state fair parade. So these are some of the Hall of Famers that Coach Aillet coached. We have Leo Sanford of the Baltimore Colts in the top left. Below him we have Tommy Hinton of the British Columbia Lions. And of course we have Terry Bradshaw, and Phil Robertson is not, he never played in the NFL, but I guess as far as like Louisiana Hall of Fame, he counts for Duck Dynasty. And he was also, of course, the quarterback when Bradshaw was a freshman at Tech. And then we have Jimmy Johnson. So his first his first coaching position was at Louisiana Tech in 1965. And he actually replaced George Darty when he was sick that season on the defense. So this is the stadium that Aillet built, essentially. When Aillet first arrived at Louisiana Tech, the stadium was located where the current lab school is, the University Lab School, which I attended as a kid, and I had no idea that the playgrounds that we ran on was the old football field where the football players ran around. But this is like one of Aillet's visions for the university. He was progressive, but his idea of progressive was kind of like more of a long-term goal. So for 25 years, this was on his mind, and he was planning for it. And they started building it when he was forced out as head football coach in 1966. It didn't get finished until 1972. But the picture on the right is how it looks now. So it's still the same stadium, but we have a new field house, a new scoreboard, a new press box, and artificial turf. So he was forced out as head coach in 1966. He remained as the golf coach and the athletic director, but while he enjoyed golf, he really did not enjoy the athletic director position because aside from the boring administrative duties, he felt underappreciated, and a lot of times, basically like he was just invisible, like no one was listening to him. So eventually he was forced out of those positions in 1970, and shortly after that he developed cancer. They had one more celebration for him in 1970 after he was forced out, and he passed away in 1971, a year afterwards. But he received a shock right before he passed away, like weeks before he passed away. His whole background, being adopted, coming to Louisiana on an orphan train from New York, he had no idea. But somehow it was released to the press, and so everyone found out, including him and his family. And he had kind of heard bits and pieces from some of his adoptive family, like his brother Clarence, so he knew a little bit about where he came from, but not the whole picture, like it came out. So you can imagine, he could have had a lot of reasons to be bitter about his life toward the end. He was forced out of a school he spent 25 years working at, enduring his bouts with cancer and surgery, and really just being bedridden the last few weeks of his life. And then finding out that essentially everything he knew about his family growing up was like turned on its head. But he was not bitter, he was not angry. He was thankful for all the opportunities that he had growing up. His adoptive family providing for him, the influence of the Catholic Church along the way, his education, his spiritual growth, and his athletic experience that stayed with him his whole life. And so I think for me personally, it's a really good testament to his character. And furthermore, he had opportunities to go elsewhere. There were universities like Ole Miss, who Tech beat 1946 fine. Ole Miss wanted him, Auburn wanted him, Florida State, we beat them as well. They were interested in Coach Aillet, but he chose to stay in Ruston, Louisiana. And it's very kind of bizarre if you think about it, especially today when coaches just do whatever they feel like, he stayed in Ruston, he felt connected to the community, and he did not, most importantly, he did not want to keep uprooting his family and moving constantly everywhere. They had already moved from Haynesville to Natchitoches to Ruston, and he really he didn't want to keep moving them everywhere. So he put his roots down in Ruston, and it's because of him that we have the church that I attended as a kid, St. Thomas Aquinas, and a football stadium that has his name. So I grew up as a kid, always going to football games and tailgates. I had no idea. I just thought, it's a cool Cajun name, and he must have been a pretty good guy, but no idea about any of this before. And I don't know, he means a lot to me personally. And I think a lot that we back home in Ruston take for granted is because of him. That's about it, but if y'all have any questions, I'm ready.
So why was he really forced out? Was it, I read some of it, he had too much responsibilities as an athlete and the coach, or was it just too much for him? Or was it just 40 years you say he was coach, right?
25.
Huh?
25.
Okay, 25, so still that's a long time, I don't know, I'm just curious, what the reason was. Is it just because he was doing too much, and they realized, he kind of realized it's a mutual thing?
I think that was part of it because before that time, in the 40s and 50s, a lot of times, it's like you're the head football coach, you're the athletic director, and you pretty much do everything else.
Yeah.
But, this is 1966, we're modernizing, so it's a lot on his plate, and the 66 season was his worst in his whole career. He was 1-9.
Yeah.
Of course, that was when they started building the new stadium.
Yeah.
They had no home games that season. Really? They played Alabama. It was a whole lot going on. So it was him, him and Taylor were not getting along, but there was a lot of other reasons why.
I'm just curious, when you forced out, it makes you think it was, in a sense, he didn't want to leave, but he kind of knew he had to leave. That's tough. And then he dies how many years later?
Well, that was 66, and he died in 71.
Yeah. All right, well, it's crazy.
Dr. Taylor was very forceful and had a lot of power in Ruston, so I bet he had something to do with that.
I don't mean to be like a hit piece on President Taylor, but
I like him, I knew him, and he's a good guy, but you're right.
I just want to thank you for writing this book. I graduated from Tech in '94, saw the name on the side of the stadium. It didn't really mean I even walked on the football team my first year until I saw that those guys were way better than me. But, it means something to me now to see that name on the side of the stadium. I want to thank you for writing the book. My oldest son bought it for me for Christmas, and when I saw you were doing this, I made a point to get through it. I really enjoyed it. Kind of really shined a light on this man who was a scholar and a gentleman and a heck of a football coach person. What made you want to write it?
Well, I'm a passionate Tech fan, and that's not completely my choice. I was pretty much brainwashed by my dad. He graduated from Tech, and he works at Tech right now. And
Wow.
we love football, so it was just no choice for me. But so I love Tech. I love Tech football. And going to St. Thomas Aquinas, I eventually saw his name on a plaque of like the original parishioners of the church, and I was like, well, you know, what the heck? I mean, I want to know more about it, you know?
Yeah.
How long did he live in the Youngsville area before he went to New Orleans to go to Holy Cross?
Well, he actually attended Holy Cross when it was a boarding school, so at 12 years old, he went there and stayed there for the majority of the time. Came back for holidays, but, you know.
I was recently over in Opelousas and visited the Orphan Train Museum, and they have a stadium seat and his picture and a plaque at the museum in his honor with a Louisiana Tech, baseball hat there, and it was just a beautiful piece of history that I didn't know anything about until recently. I think he just did a remarkable job with what he had, and his upbringing was, a true reflection of the kind of character he was. So it's a great visit. I don't know if you've ever been to the Orphan Train Museum there.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that. I was going to mention that y'all should definitely go if you're in Opelousas. Check it out. And there's good food over there.
I actually have an uncle that was an athlete at Tech before and after World War II, and he spoke very highly of Coach Aillet, and I believe Cecil Crowley was the basketball coach, because I believe that's who my uncle played for. And so he went on to great things in the business world, my uncle did, but he always had his roots at Louisiana Tech. I'm very proud of that.
And Coach Crowley, he was IA's assistant coach at Paintsville, but Coach IA coached 1 year of basketball. That was during World War II, and it was like, are we going to have a team? Are we not? Crowley was actually overseas at the time anyway, so it was horrible. They won like 5 games.
Just as a footnote, back then, if you were a scholarship athlete in one sport, you had to play another sport also, and you also had to have a job to keep your scholarship.
Wow.
Things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, they pay you.
Do you know anything about his children?
Cynthia IA, his daughter, I worked very closely with her on the project. Bobby, I really wanted to meet him, but he was in poor health during the time, and he died before it got published. So.
Very nice.
Actually, one of the highest awards for Louisiana Tech football is the Joe Aillet Award. And you did mention that. I don't know if you say anything about that in your book, but it's a very prestigious award named for character, as such he was. As far as Bobby Aillet, we actually, the wife and I got to share many Tech games with Coach Aillet, Bobby Aillet. And our son played for Louisiana Tech and did receive the Joe Aillet Award in 2001.
Wow.
And anyway, he is very well thought of in football circles at Louisiana Tech.
One thing I heard of growing up in Ruston was that Coach Aillet was very community-minded, as you said, and really liked the town and the different coaches and the people he worked closely with. He would encourage one to join the Lions Club, one to be a Kiwanian, one to be whatever they had, but to, sometimes the school would be very separate from the community, and he tried to bring them together, the school and the community, with participation in the civic clubs.
Integrate the school into the community.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes back to his Holy Cross education, because they were concerned about the whole person, the whole student, and that whole religious order was founded like in the context of like basically a decade after the French Revolution. In France, there were like not a whole lot of schools at the time, and because they were destroyed, in the context of it, a lot of the schools were like by religious orders or like royalty, and the French Revolution did away with that. So then there were secular schools, but after all of the wars after that, there were not a whole lot of schools, good schools. And so Holy Cross was founded with the intention of education.
I had a question about his early life. I believe we came in right after you began. This is the streets of New York City where the children were orphaned, is that what you said? So he
Yes.
came from New York City. How old was he, and did Clarence, who you allude was his brother, was that a biological brother or a child of his adoptive parents? And did he have other brothers and sisters? And if so, did any of them go to Louisiana Tech?
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part?
He came from New York. How
Yeah.
old was he? When
2.5.
2.5.
And then Clarence was his, not his biological brother, but he had other siblings that they were not biological. And to my knowledge, none of them went to Tech.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to shout out, thank you for the compliment for the Louisiana Orphan Train Museum. I'm on the board. Thank you, yes, and I thought it's great, Christopher, everything you said. I love how you said when he was in Ruston, I call it the North and South Louisiana connection of Joe Aillet, the museum in Opelousas, but when you said he felt connected to his community when he was up in North Louisiana, and he didn't want to move his family around. I know the family, Mr. Bobby and Miss Cynthia and the grandchildren and everything, because one thing, as Christopher said, he never forgot where he came from his roots. My grandmother also came on the Orphan Train, so I'm very familiar with how the family feels about him. But one thing I will say, the most respected man, you know, top guy on our wall at the museum. We weren't open 2 years, and this couple came in. It was a older couple with his son and his daughter-in-law, and he said, I came here to see Joe Aillet's picture. I said, come on, I'll show you where it's at. And I said, did you play football for Coach Aillet? And he said, I only played 1 year of football at Louisiana Tech under him. He said, but I'll never forget this man. And he was just so teary-eyed seeing his picture on the wall. You know, he touched so many people's lives, and, you know, he just never forgot his roots, in my opinion. And so I really appreciate you, Christopher, and everything, you know, the beautiful story. He's buried at St. Anne's Church in Youngsville next to his foster mother. And when he passed away, there were 11 of the 12 original football players that went to the funeral. And the only reason there wasn't 12 is because one of the players was killed in the war. All 11 of those people went to his service. So just a man of integrity. I couldn't have said it better than Christopher, but we're very proud to have him in the Louisiana Orphan Train Museum.
And one more thing, while it's on my mind, Coach Jimmy Mize, he was also in the war, in World War II, and he had a lot of experience as a pilot. So when he came back and it was time to recruit, he and Coach Aillet would actually fly to recruit, which was pretty uncommon at the time. But sometimes it would be like, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I have heard that it would be like multiple games in one Friday evening that they would go to. Is that true? I don't know, but it sounds like a good story. Okay.
It's a good story anyway.
Chris, I just wanted, Joe Aillet was my great uncle. Clarence, his brother, was my grandfather. My dad was Charlie Aillet. And I didn't get to see him that often, I live in Houston. I drove from Houston to be here today because I just wanted to thank Christopher Curtin for writing the book. And Uncle Joe was like he's my great, my dad's favorite uncle, and he just was like everyone said, he was so soft-spoken and so gentle, you know, and the kindest man I've ever met. And Bobby, when my dad my dad had colon cancer, and when he passed away, I called Bobby to ask him if he would be a pallbearer for my dad. And he said, your dad sent me an application 6 months ago to be a pallbearer for him. And I filled it out, and he offered me the job, but he did tell me that I had to go and I needed to do some upper body strength building as a condition to be a pallbearer. And that was just one of those stories that I had to share.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for.
Thanks. Was there like an event in his life that caused him to be a coach, or did he just always want to be a coach, just playing football and all that, just kind of deal, like he just couldn't give it up after he quit playing sports? I mean, you said he played all these sports. I mean, I'm interested to read the book. I don't know much about him at all, but until I was also live, I was like, wow, like this guy, just look at the face, he's a legend, you know, I'm just saying the way he looks, and even just hearing all things about it, it's impressive. Because I feel like he didn't want the attention on him. He just wanted to basically walk in the game, win the game, and just say, next game, you know, move on. But I guess my question is, was there an event, or is there someone who inspired him to want to be a coach?
I'm not sure. I never found out that there was like a one specific.
Coaching, you get a lot, as I was saying, and so it's kind of crazy in the sense that, like, how long was he the athletic director and the coach for?
So football coach 25 years,
Okay.
athletic director and golf coach.
That's a lot,
29 years at Tech. I'm terrible at math, sorry.
No, that's just crazy he did all those things. You know, like,
And have
wow.
a bad last season. It's where they treat coaches like that.
I mean, I think he's tough. You know, I don't know him, and hearing his story, it's like he felt like he could do better. It's like it's tough. You know, 1-9. It's like I guess I don't have it anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, he never had an undefeated season. He had 3 where it was like 9-1.
Really? Wow.
I have a friend who always has an adage that he repeats that might apply to Coach Aillet. He said, if you do more than what's expected, pretty soon more will be expected.
Yeah.
Quick question. Do you know, and I guess it'd be easy to look up, but while he coached, did they participate in Division II football? Is that what they played while he was head coach there? And then I guess in 70 or whatever, did they move to 1AA? Is that?
They were still in Division II, like in the Southland Conference, and that was through the 80s. So I think it was like 95 maybe, Division I. That was when we were in the WAC, Western Athletic.
But that they have 2 divisions in Division I. They have Division 1A and Division 1AA. Today they call it FCS and FBS.
Crazy.
And so I was just wondering, I guess while he was there, they were Division II, and then I think when they went to the Southland, I guess they went to 1AA, or
Yeah.
is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know if anyone's interested in the Orphan Train Museum, we have flyers for the open house coming up on October 14th.
Yes, and I also have some of these that I'll put back there. I have some
Yeah.
brochures. Yes, ma'am, the brochures. Thank you. Thank you.
Who eventually started the Orphan Train? Like, you know that information. Who eventually started the Orphan Train?
So the guy that's responsible for it, his name is Charles Loring Brace,
Okay.
and he was a minister back in, I think it was 1854, the very first Orphan Train.
Okay.
And from him, there were like 3 other separate Protestant groups that started,
Really?
and then eventually this one.
Wow.
It's very good.
Impressive.
Right, any other questions?
And if you want to buy a book, I'm over here. I also have Venmo at the bottom of my poster if y'all want to do that. I also accept cash.